In this video, I'll be reviewing the Garmin Edge 520 cycling computer. I've been using the Edge 510 for 3 or 4 years and just switched to the 520 about a month ago. So here are my thoughts, and I'll go over features of it. And this computer is loaded with features, so I won't have time in this video to go over every one of them, but I will cover the ones that I think are applicable to most cyclists. Also, I'm not going to be doing a direct head-to-head comparison with the 510. I'll probably make a separate video to really highlight the differences, but in this video I will talk about some of those differences because as you look at a computer, you kind of look and see how they progress from an earlier model. So it's only fair to make some comparisons and show some differences between the 510 and the 520. So with that, before I show the 520, let me show what you get in the box. So this is the box that you would get. And it comes with the handlebar mount that mounts it out in front. I don't use this because I mainly do mountain bike and cyclocross, and I just don't want that leverage of the thing sticking out there and bumping around on the handlebar. But if you do road bike or tri, this is a great mount. You also get 2 of the standard mounts that you can mount on the handlebar or a stem. And it comes with the various size O-rings, and I'll show how these go on a bike here in a little bit. And you also get your charge cable. The 520 uses the USB micro B as opposed to the mini B that was on the 510, and this is like the connectors that you would use like an Android phone or something like that. So it's the micro B, so the one that's a little bit smaller. Now you don't get the actual plug to go into the wall, so you would either have to have kind of an adapter to do that or just plug it into a computer. The 510 actually came with the wall plug that you could plug the USB-A here into that, but you don't get that with the 520. So that's what you get with the unit itself. And I also want to add that you can buy this in a bundle where you'd get the heart rate monitor and the cadence sensor. This is the one without the bundle, so that's an option too. I already have the heart rate monitor strap. If you don't, I would actually recommend getting it with that bundle to get the heart rate monitor strap because it's very useful. You can also buy the little rubber cover, and this slides on there very easily. I also have this for my 510, and I would recommend it. It's only about 10 bucks, and just in case you ever take a tumble and the Garmin comes off the bike and bounces around on the ground, it would protect it. I've never had that happen, but it's always a possibility. Now to mount these on a bike, it's very simple. You would just put the unit in sideways, twist it, and it locks in. And I have never had one of these fall out, so it's very secure and it's very quick. And yes, I do have 2 mounts on here because I was testing the 510 and the 520. I have it mounted on my handlebar, but a lot of people will mount it on the stem. This is a 90mm stem, and it's a little tight with the Garmin. I also like it better on the handlebar because it's a little bit easier. You don't have to bring your eyes down as low when you're looking at the screen, so it's a little bit easier to read for me when it's on the handlebar. Looking at the unit, it is smaller than the 510, so this begins some of my comparisons with the 510. And the screen is actually bigger, but the unit is smaller, so that's very nice. Looking at the buttons, you've got your power button up here on the top left, and you would just hold that down for about a second. The unit's going to power on. Similar to the 510, it's also on the top left. And the pause button is actually on the side of the unit on the 520. And so this would be where you can pause your ride, start your ride, and this is your lap button here. The 510, it was on the top. Now, the biggest difference between the 510 and the 520, and this is most of my comparison that I'll do between the two, and again I'll save the rest of it for a head-to-head video, is the fact that the 520 is no longer a touchscreen. So the original 500 used buttons with no touchscreen. Garmin switched to a touchscreen on the 510, and then they went back to the buttons on the 520. So I'm kind of neutral about that. I actually prefer the touchscreen when I'm going through settings. So if I were to come here, go into the folder and look at different rides or different settings. So if I wanted to select a course, it's quicker with the touchscreen. Again, going into settings, that kind of thing. So as here, and I'll show this more in detail in a minute, but you would actually go into settings and things like that using these buttons. And then this button on the top right is kind of your selection button. So anytime you would select, and this on the bottom right is to go back one screen. And so your arrows are here on the side, up arrow, down arrow, depending on how you want to scroll through your menus. So again, it's quicker on the 510 when you're going through those kind of settings. When you're actually riding, I actually prefer the buttons on the 520. It's more positive. Sometimes to go to different screens, you would swipe, and the 510 is not like a cell phone. It's not just a real light touch like you would do in a cell phone. It requires a little bit of pressure, but it's not reliant upon actual touch with the skin. So you can do it with gloves on, and that's, I'm sure, why they did that. But there were times when I'd swipe a screen and I wouldn't either press down hard enough or just wouldn't catch. And so with the 520 using the buttons, it's very positive in the clicks, and you get the little audible alarm. So let me start a ride here, and obviously I'm not moving. So, but to go to different screens, I'm going to use the up arrow and kind of just scroll through different screens. Whereas on the 510, I would hit the play pause to start my ride, and then to go to different screens, I would swipe over. So that is the main difference to me between the 510 and the 520. You can see sometimes I do the swipe and it doesn't catch. So the buttons do make it easier when you ride. So again, I'm kind of neutral about that. I would hope that Garmin used user feedback and decided that reason to go back to the buttons, because it seems like it's a little backwards in technology. But from an end user experience, it's really not that big of a deal for me. Now I'm going to go through some of the screens, and you'll see that I'm on the home screen. First thing I want to point out is you can tap the power button to change your brightness. So you would just use your up arrows, down arrows to change the brightness. I'm going to leave it on 100% for this video just so it'll show up better. And by the way, it was the same way on the 510. You would tap the power button to change your brightness as well, and then you would tap it again to exit back out. And you can do that while you're riding. So you can have a ride going, be on any screen, and tap that power button and change your brightness. So I'm back at the home screen, and if you hit the up arrow, you go in kind of the status, and you'll see here it says status. So let's go over here. You can also change your brightness here, and again, the top right button is your select button. So I can change the brightness. I can change how long the backlight will time out. So let's change it to 1 minute. It'll be easier for this video, so it'll stay on. And you can also change the color mode. I haven't really messed with that. It's on auto, and I leave it on auto. And when it gets dark out, it'll switch to kind of more of a night mode, which is kind of cool. And then I haven't done anything with screen capture. I'm not really sure what that does. Like I said, I can't go over every feature in this video, so let's hit the main ones. GPS, you can actually change which satellites are used, and that's something I don't think a lot of people are really going to do, but the option's there. I haven't really messed with it. Connecting to sensors. Okay, so I use a heart rate monitor, and one of my bikes has a power meter, and so you can connect to the sensors through here. It'll also sense a sensor. So if you have a heart rate monitor, using it for the first time, it'll pick it up, it'll ask if you want to connect to it, same with the power meter, and then you would just connect. And then this is kind of the status of your Bluetooth connection. So I have it connected to my phone, which I'll show in a minute, and you can change settings here. Now I want to point out something here while I'm in this screen. This is a really nice feature of the 520, which is new. And that is the fact that you can have calls and text messages show up on the screen while you're riding. I found that actually one of the most useful features of the 520 as opposed to the 510, because you might get a text message from someone that you just don't want to take that, stop and take the message, or you might see a message come in where you want to pull off and take it. Now, When I first got the unit, it would only say who the text message was from. I did an upgrade and updated to the latest firmware, and now it'll actually say who it's from, and then it'll read the first few lines of the text, which is really convenient. It's kind of hard to read if you're on a bumpy dirt road or definitely on a mountain bike. If you're on the road, you can read it. You just got to be careful. It'll stay up for about 10 seconds. I kind of wish you could leave it up and then clear it out, hit the back button or something to get the text message off the screen. It will only stay on the screen for about 10 seconds, so you really have to look down and read it quickly. If it were to stay up there, you could wait until it's a safe point to look at the text. So that's the only thing I hope they change with later firmware, but that is a great feature on this. Again, it's not on the 510, and this is where you could turn that on or off. You could also come over here and select missed calls and text. So I don't have any here, but it'll show any ones that I guess you haven't acknowledged or read. I'm not really sure why you would do that, but just having them pop up on the screen is really convenient. So I want to go back, and I'm going to go back out to the home screen. Back out at the home screen. Now we're going to go into the menu, and you see the little down arrow menu. So I'm going to hit the down arrow. This is where you would go to things like history and training, things like that. So if I go to history, I can just show different rides. So today I did a 40-mile gravel ride. I can go into there, and it gives me some stats. If I select the ride, I can go summary. I can look at elevation. This was a really flat ride. I don't really use this that much because you can also do the same thing on your phone, which I'll show here in a minute, which I found to be a lot more detail, and it's just easier to use. You don't have to go into all these little menus and things like that. So again, it's there if you want to use it, if you don't have it connected to your phone. If I look at elevation, that's kind of cool. It gives you a little graph of your elevation change, and you can look at different things like that. But again, I found the phone easier. So I'm going to go back out, and now I'm going to go into training. And this is where I spend most of my time if I go to a menu. The top is courses. So let me talk about courses here for a few minutes, because this, to me, it's one of the best features of the Garmin units, being able to map out a course and follow it. I've also found it to be one of the most frustrating things with the 520, and that's going to lead me to my largest complaint with this unit. So with courses, you can go online, and I'm not going to do it on this video. I'll make a separate video that shows kind of a tutorial of how to go online and create a course. But you can go on Garmin Connect. So if you don't have an account, you would set it up, and then you would map out a course. It's pretty self-explanatory. And then you could come over here on your phone. So this is the app. This is the Garmin Connect app, Android, iOS. They both work about the same, and it's a very useful app. And it connects by Bluetooth to your unit. And so I can come over here to courses in the menu, and I can send a course to my unit. So if I wanted to do that, let's just find a course here. Tap on the course. You would tap on the little icon up here, and then you would select, like I have both units on right now, so it's connecting to both. So I'm going to send it to the 520. As soon as I'm done, I hit done. It'll sync with the 520. It'll send my course over, and you see it says sync complete, so that means the course went over. Now let me add, this works a whole lot better on the 520 than it does on the 510. Last night I tried to put a course through the app, and it would not work on the 510. I had to actually hook it up to the computer and do it that way. So that is, I think, something they've really updated with the firmware, with the 520, being able to send courses, and just how it works with the app. The 520 is a smoother operating computer. The 510 is a little bit more buggy. They've smoothed some things out with the 520. So I've sent the course over, and then on the unit, if I go to training, I can select courses. Again, I'm hitting the select button, and this is the course that I just sent over. So I did not have it on there. If I wanted to follow this course, I would hit the select button here, go into the course. It's going to load it, and then I would hit ride, and it's going to start me on that course, riding the course. And it takes, depending on how long the course, it can take a while to load. Now you can look at different things on the course before you loaded it. Again, these are things you can look at on the app, so I don't really use this that much, but you would hit ride and it would tell you, do you want to navigate to the beginning of the course? A little tone there. So I usually do cancel because I know where the course starts, but you could, in theory, just select OK and it'll tell you how to get to the start of your course. So I'm going to do cancel here for navigate to the beginning of the course. And I don't know why it says I'm done with the course, but maybe it's because I'm past where it starts. But anyway, it's going to show the map. And let me also say that you can add 2 different data fields on your map. And you can see here I've got speed and power on here. And I'll talk about activity profiles here in a minute. But you can put 2 different fields, which is actually very useful. Now, let me go into my biggest complaint and something that's very baffling to me about the 520 and even the 510 for that matter. So when I first got this unit, the courses that I mapped out on Garmin Connect, I would actually get an arrow telling me which way to go when I'm coming up to a turn. It would even tell me I'm half a mile from my turn. You know, it'd say half mile turn left, half a mile turn right. There are times that doesn't work. So it worked my first few rides and then it stopped working. So I called Garmin and asked them, why do I not see these turns that used to come up on the screen when I'm on the map? And the guy I actually talked to had to ask someone else, and he came back on the phone and said, well, it's not supposed to do that. And I'm like, what? It's not supposed to do it, but it did it? It's a very useful, very powerful feature that just doesn't work sometimes because it's not supposed to. So I absolutely just don't understand that. You know, Garmin is supposed to be one of the leading companies in GPS navigation, and being able to just tell you when the turn's coming up, it doesn't work sometimes. Now, I was able to, if I go back out to my home screen and I go into the menu, and I'm going to go back into training, and I'll go into courses, and I'll go to course options. You'll see this turn guidance. Sometimes if I turn this off, power off the unit, power it back on, and then turn it back on, it will work. And so, but even today, I did a gravel ride this morning, and it didn't work. And I did that. I had it turn guidance off, turned it back on, and I powered on the unit, and I didn't get my turn directions. And also on the turn directions, and I can go back into my ride by selecting that button. Actually, I guess I can't. So I'm not. If I were actually riding, it would. So it also, if I'm on a different screen, so I'm on, let's say, this screen here, it would give me the turn directions when I'm coming up, and that's when it's really useful. If right now it's just kind of you follow the little pink line, which it works. But having those turn directions pop up on the screen are very useful, especially, again, like I said, if you're in this screen, at the bottom of the screen, it'll say, left turn in half mile, left turn in, 0.1 mile. And it'll also give you an audible alarm to know that the turn's coming up. But again, there's times that doesn't work. So that's probably one of my biggest complaints about the 520. Again, I do not understand why it works sometimes. And I did call Garmin back and I talked to someone else, and that person said, well, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But again, I don't understand. Hopefully that will be corrected in future firmware updates. But for right now, it's spotty. It's great when it works. But again, you can follow the pink line, but you have to go back to the map. And it will give you an audible alarm if you pass your turn. It'll say off course, no matter what screen you're on. It'll give you a little audible alarm and a message that says off course at the bottom of the screen. So that's helpful, and that would alert you to go back to your map and see which way you got to go. But those turn-by-turn directions are extremely useful, and I'm going to end my rant there, but hopefully Garmin will fix that. So when you're riding and you're done with your ride, you would hit the play pause button. You can also do laps, which I find is kind of useful if you want to mark different segments. You want to see maybe what your heart rate or power is, or how long it takes you to do a segment, or if you're actually doing laps in a course, you can hit this lap button, and then when you look online or look on your app, it'll show what your data is for that lap. So when you're done, you hit your play pause. And also on the 520, when it's paused or when it's stopped, you get that little red, or it's red when it's stopped, yellow when it's paused, kind of bar around the screen, which is kind of cool. So at this point, I could save my ride, I could discard the ride, and so I'm going to discard it. But let me also say, with the turn directions, sometimes you can go on the menu button, and if you're on your ride, to get to the menu button, you can hit this button up here, and it's going to bring you to these menus. So let me go back. I'm going to start this ride again, and I'm going to hit this menu button. Sometimes you get this turn directions, and it'll give you, different directions that are coming up. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So that's enough of that. So if I want to just save the ride, I would hit the play pause. I would select save ride. For this time, I'm going to scroll down to discard ride, and we'll discard it. Back out at the main screen, I'm going to go back into training. Now let's talk about Strava Live Segments, because this is a really awesome feature that Garmin has added on the 510, the 520, and probably the 800 series, I would imagine. However, just like the turn-by-turn directions, it doesn't work all the time. And I called Garmin and talked to them about it, and the person I spoke with said they're having some issues. Some, like my mountain bike segments, it works. So a lot of my road segments, it doesn't. I don't understand it. Hopefully they'll fix it. That's my second biggest complaint with the 520 and the 510. So the way this works, and I'm not going to go heavily into it, it takes a few steps to set up. One, you've got to be a Strava premium user, which I am. I use Strava a lot. I love it. You've got to be a Strava premium user, and then you also have to star your segments or create a goal. Once you do that, they will come up on the Garmin unit. So these are all the segments that I've starred. Now in theory, what's supposed to happen is, as you're coming up to the segment, it'll let you know you're getting close. Once you start the segment, it'll say go, and it'll give you feedback. And if you've set a goal, it might be the king of the mountain or to beat a certain time, it'll tell you how far ahead or behind you are of that goal. So when it works, it's awesome. It really works well. When it doesn't, it's frustrating. So again, I hope this is something Garmin fixes, because it's a great feature. Like I said, this also works on the 510. So you would get segments that pop up. It's a little bit, to me, it's a little bit better looking user interface on the 520. But if you're not a Strava premium user, and I'll go back into here, then you could also set up your own segments on Garmin Connect, which is the online website. And when you come to this menu, it's not going to say Strava Live Segments. I think it just says Segments. And so you have to actually activate this. And you also, by the way, have to link your Garmin Connect account with your Strava account. It's not hard to do. You do it from Strava. And again, that's probably something that I'll do in a separate video. The next thing that I want to point out in the training menu is workouts. These are specific workouts that you would go on Garmin Connect online. You have to do it on the computer. And then you can see the workouts on your unit here. Now you do have to use the app to send the workouts to your Garmin. So I'm going to come over here to my menu, and let's go now to workouts. So these are different ones that I have created. So I've got here, let's look at 3-minute repeats. I'm not going to show how to do this like I said on the computer, but I'll do this as a separate video. And then I would do the same thing like with sending a course. I would just tap this button, select the unit that I want to send it to, hit done. It's going to send it over to the unit. Then it will show up here, and it's really useful. So you can set up all kind of intervals, and I think I may have actually sent that over. So there's my 3-minute repeats, and you can go into it, and you would say do workout, and you would just follow it. So that again, I'm not going to go into all the things with the workout. That will be a separate video, but it's a very useful feature. The next thing in the training menu is training calendar. This is something that I have not really messed around with, but you can go online and set up a training calendar. So if you want to do certain workouts on certain days, you could set it up here. And if I'm going to select this, and you'll see that I have nothing there. But that's something that once I get into my structured training coming up this summer, I'll probably do. But that's a pretty neat feature. And finally, I want to point out that you can select this indoor trainer, and you can pair it to a trainer that has an Ant Plus connection. Again, this is something that I have not used, but if you have a trainer like that, I live in a state, fortunately, where we ride all year round, and so I don't have a trainer that fancy, but if you do, that's a pretty cool feature. One last thing that I'll say about the training menu is you can select set a target, and so I'll do distance only, and I had set up one that said 20 miles, and you can do a custom, so you can come in here and set a distance, time, whatever, and so if you would select it, it would kind of tell you how much is remaining, estimated finish time, average speed, that kind of thing. So that's something I've not personally used, but for some people it might be a pretty useful training feature. All right, back out at the main screen, I'm going to go back into my menu, and let's go into settings, and I'll point out a few settings that are going to be useful. First of all, activity profiles. With activity profiles, this is where you set up the screens that'll come up depending on which profile you select. So I've got two that I mainly use. I've got Train and I've got Ride. So Train has my power meter screens that come up, whereas Ride does not. And you can customize all kinds of data fields that come up. So I don't use Race. So let's go into Race, and you can change the color and even change what satellites you use, and you can change the name, of course. And let's go into data screens, because this is the main thing that you'll probably do. And so you've got all these different screens. You can turn them on or off. So screen 1 is one that's activated, and I would come over here and select fields. So these this screen has 5 fields, so if I wanted to change that, I could say, yeah, let's do 6 fields that come up. And then you can, oops, let's cancel that. I guess I have to select that. And then, so now I've got 6 fields, and let's say you want to change one. So this one has heading. Now, you've got, I'm not going to go through all these because there's a ton of them, but you've got all these different main types, which is cadence, calories. Distance is probably the one that a lot of y'all are going to use. All kind of things, and you can mess around with it here and see which kind of screens, but let's do power. And you've got all different kinds of power settings. So balance 3 seconds average. I use the power 3 second average. You can once you get your, if you get a power meter, you can decide which one you want. This is the one that I use, power 3 second average. So let's do that one. And I'll just show you a couple more. Let's go into the general data fields. If you want to show your battery level, you could do that. Time of day, temperature, when sunset, when sunrise. So again, just tons of different screens. So it's the activity profiles where you would set up which screens would come up, again, depending on which activity profile you select. To select the activity profile you want to use before you start your ride, if you're back out at the main screen, you would hit the select button up at the top right, and then you would select which field. So if I wanted to change it to ride, I would scroll down, hit ride, and now I'm in that activity profile, and I would just hit the play pause and start my ride. A few more things. Now you see sensors, it's the same screen that you would go into back that I showed at the beginning of the screen. So this is how you would drill into it through settings, but you can do a quick setting back from the home screen by tapping that up button. Same with Bluetooth. You can do device transfers, transfer stuff to another device. That's not something that I think a lot of y'all are going to use, and not something that I've used. System, you can turn tones on or off, decide which kind of units you want to use, like metric or English. They call it statute, I think, for English. the language, you can reset the device. And so that's it for the settings menu. Like I said, I think activity profiles is the main thing that you're going to do when you go into the settings menu. Since I mentioned activity profiles, let me mention one more thing for those of you who are watching this video who use a 510. You don't set up bike profiles anymore on the 520 like you did on the 510. So here you see on the 510 I've got my gravel bike, I've got my mountain bike, trail, mountain bike, XC, and I didn't really like that, because what happens here is this is where you would link a sensor. So if you had a power meter on your bike, you would have to specify which bike has the power meter and then remember to select that bike before you start your ride. With the 520, it's kind of cool because it just, if your power meter is on, it will find it. Same with the heart rate meter. So you'll see, or heart rate monitor I should say, you'll see the blinking heart and the blinking dumbbell here. That means you have a heart rate monitor and power meter activated, but it can't find it yet because it's not on. So again, you don't have to select it in the bike profile. It's just if it finds it, it uses it. If it doesn't find it, it doesn't. A couple more things I want to mention as I wrap up this video. First of all, I mentioned the turn-by-turn direction. If you use Ride with GPS, you can create a TCX course and download it into the Garmin, and it will kind of give you turn-by-turn directions, and that when you get to the turn, it'll tell you where to go. And I made a separate video of how to do that. It's pretty simple, but you would have to use Ride with GPS. So again, it's one of those things where I scratch my head and ask myself, why does a third-party app or third-party website like Ride with GPS allow you to do turn-by-turn directions, but the Garmin one, the Garmin site, which is Garmin Connect, doesn't. So that is an option. The final thing that I'll mention, a really neat feature about the 520, and that is it now supports third-party base maps. The base map that comes with the 520 is pretty sparse. It's got major roads, but like smaller neighborhood roads, it will not show up on the map. You can now go into, you use Open Streets, and there's a way that you can map this. You basically select which area of the United States or the world, I think, that you want to show up on your Garmin, and then you would create a map and then put it on the unit. If you're interested in doing that, there's a site that I would recommend. It's dcrainmaker.com. Go there and he shows you how to do that, how to put a third-party base map on here. So here is an example. On my 510, you can see I'm at the same place, but there is absolutely no streets that come up, whereas here I've got my neighborhood streets that come up, which is kind of cool. Now, it's not quite as useful as it may sound, because some of the street names are kind of small, they're kind of hard to read, but you know, and most of us carry a cell phone with us that has, you know, Google Maps or whatever, so you can pull out your phone and see where you're at. But it's nice to not have to pull out your phone if maybe you're coming up to an intersection, you want to find out you know, where you're at, what the street name is. So that is kind of a nice feature with the 520, and the fact that you can download third-party base maps. While I'm talking about maps, let me just throw out some last things that I want to mention, and that is on the map, if you hit the select button, that'll go into the menu. So if you're doing a ride, the select button will always go into your menus. And you can zoom in or out of the map, or you can select auto zoom. I leave it on auto zoom. If you were to take that off, you could then select your zoom level, and you would kind of hit, so I'm going to zoom out, and you can see all the streets that come up. So this is a map that I put on. I just did my area, and then hit select again, and you're at your zoom level. So I'll go back here. Now I'm going to put it back on auto zoom. Another thing that I'll mention on the menu, oops, let me go back to my ride here and go back to the map, is you can change your data fields. So while I'm on the map, if I hit menu, go to data fields, I've got speed and power that come up on my map. And you know, like I said, having to follow the line and not get turn-by-turn directions is not as convenient as having the turn-by-turn directions, but the nice thing about it is you can have data fields, so you can follow your line but also have things like speed and power or distance also show up on the map in case you have to leave it on your map. I'm going to go back out here and I'll go to one more screen and I'll tap my menu button, and you can also change your data fields from here. And this is something that I don't think is on the 510 that I think is a cool feature, that you can actually go into your data fields, and if you wanted to change, let's say, heart rate to something else, you could do it right there. So that is a cool feature that you can actually do that from your ride. I don't want to spend a lot of time going over the app in this video, but I will just show that you can see a lot of data from your ride. And when you tap on your ride, you can go to see all of your stats. If you did any laps, if you hit the lap button, it'll show some data from that lap. And then it'll show some charts. So here it shows my speed, heart rate, because I have my heart rate monitor on, cadence, because I had a power meter on the crank and it was able to record cadence, elevation, it shows my power and gives you my average and max at the top, gives you a graph, and then temperature. So a lot of data, and you can also pull this up online on Garmin Connect. And I will throw in that since I have my Strava account linked with Garmin Connect, what happens is when I save a ride, so when I'm done with my ride, I hit save, it automatically goes through the app, uploads it to Garmin Connect, Garmin Connect sends it over to Strava. So when I hit save ride on the Garmin 520, within about a minute, my ride is saved in Strava. So that is really cool. So that's going to wrap it up with my review of the Garmin Edge 520. As you can see, it's not perfect. There's some room for improvement, but it's still a very powerful tool. Whether you're using it to map out rides, to use it as a head unit for your power meter, heart rate monitor, whatever, it has a lot of features, and I think you'll be able to take advantage of quite a few of them, no matter what type of riding you do. Would I recommend this computer? Yes, absolutely, if you don't already own a GPS cycling computer. Would I recommend upgrading from the 510 to the 520? The answer to that question is probably no, unless you really want to take advantage of some of the features like having your phone calls and text messages show up on the screen while you're riding and being able to download third-party maps. Other than that, the 510 is still a great computer. It's made well. This one's still going very strong. So stay tuned to my channel because I'm probably going to be doing some how-to videos on the 520, particularly how you can do things online like create workouts and do mapping and things like that. And also I'll probably do a head-to-head video comparing the 510 versus the 520, go into some more features between the two. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. Thanks for watching.